Hi, Adora. Chineye, good morning. I'm just waiting for the queue to start so we can get this conversation on the road. I see Chineye. I see Adora. Do we have Juliet here yet? Is Akin here? And do we have the Honorable Commissioner as well? If you're here, please just turn on your camera so you can be spotlighted. Tony, I understand Akin is at the venue, so I don't know if he's mic'd up and ready to go. Let's give a few minutes before we start. Thank you very much for coming early.
Digital governance issues. And having this conversation is also very exciting for me because it's an opportunity to not only state, a position around what we would like to see and what we consider to be best practices around creating an enabling environment, but also to hear and have a conversation about the challenges and the opportunities in creating that relatively competent and efficient digital governance environment. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Is Tony here? Hello, Tony.
All right, thank you very much. I was temporarily muted. I think perhaps Adora's remarks were so powerful that the universe conspired to shut me up. Thanks for those remarks, Adora. Can the organizers please just not mute any of the speakers? We will coordinate ourselves in a very organized fashion. You can trust us. Thank you. Chineye, please go ahead and take the floor.
Thank you, Carl, and thank you to Lagos State Government for inviting me to this panel, which is really, really important. As we all know, in Nigeria, Lagos sets the pace, and most follow, and not just in Nigeria. I think across Africa. Very recently, I was in a discussion in Canada with somebody from Congo, who told me that his dying wish is that he must get to Lagos before he goes up to the great beyond. He grew up as a child in Congo, hearing about Nigeria, but most importantly about this city called Lagos. So now forward 20, 30 years later, and we're at this session able to have a discussion around what Lagos should look like in the years ahead, the decades ahead. So my name is Chineye Mbaozuku, and I'm the president of the Institute of Software Practitioners of Nigeria, which is the industry association for software companies. And software companies, of course, cover the products themselves as well as the services that they provide. At the heart of our mandate really is advocacy. So it's a great opportunity to be here to be able to express some of our thoughts around advocacy. I believe that as we go through the conversation, we'll be able to explore a lot more. But let me just say one or two things, in addition to the fact that Lagos is pivotal to what happens to not just Nigeria, but largely Africa. We will see that as far as technology is concerned and the entire digital economy discussion is concerned, it hasn't been more than 10 years, maybe 15 years since we saw a pivot, a slow but steady pivot from South Africa through East Africa and Kenya and landing in Lagos. Today, Lagos accounts for a huge amount of the foreign direct investment into the digital economy sector. And I think in 2019, of the approximately $700 billion that landed in Nigeria, about 660 of it landed in Lagos. That alone tells you the import, and it hasn't, and it's growing exponentially. So I guess our goal today is to ask ourselves, what should be the role of government in ensuring that this happens? But beyond that, how does technology become a tool for creating the type of environment that not just drives the digital economy, but creates a better life for its citizens? And I think that's where we would like to explore that. So in the course of our discussions, I'll make some references to what those specific factors are that we need to put in place and do some kind of a comparison against where we currently are. So thank you for having me, and look forward to discussion.
Thank you, Chineye, for that. Again, I want to remind the organizers to please not mute the panelists or myself. It creates a lag in the conversation if we constantly have to wait to be unmuted. Thank you very much, Chineye, for those remarks. At this point, I'd like to invite the Honorable Commissioner for Science and Technology to make some remarks, but specifically, Honorable Commissioner, I am very curious. In your opinion, how would you say the state of Lagos is faring in terms of leveraging technology? I think we really want to chart a path forward, but I'm curious to get your thoughts on how far the state has come in terms of leveraging technology. The Honorable Commissioner, please.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Akim Popola, the Honorable Commissioner for Science and Technology in Lagos State. Lagos State is at the forefront of technology in Nigeria as well as Africa. We are in the business of enabling the growth of technology both in the public and in the private sectors. The governor is committed to invest heavily in technology because technology is the bedrock of our team's agenda. We have so many initiatives. One of them that we're pursuing right now is the Metro Fiber, which we're starting with 3,000 kilometers and eventually we'll go to 6,000. And this will provide connectivity to about just everywhere in the state, from government offices to hospitals, to schools, and to businesses as well as markets, because we believe that technology is the future. We cannot continue to do business as usual. We have to look at different ways. A state of 22 million people, definitely it's important that we take technology serious, and that is what we're doing. Now, when you look at Lagos State is a subnational of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So there are some things that we can do, and there are some things that are left to the federal government. But when you look at Nigeria as a whole, when you look at Africa, Nigeria has 23% of all internet users in Africa. That is a whole lot. That is number one in Africa. And when you come down granularly to Lagos, you see that Lagos State has a larger share of the market. And we have so many multinational companies here with us today that will be testament to what the Lagos State government is doing and what we'll continue to do to leverage technology to conduct our business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Commissioner. I appreciate how you set the stage for us. Chineye, before I know you have to hop off at some point. I'd like to just, get your take on the state of affairs as the Commissioner has put it. Particularly, I'd like you to comment on how much of a handshake is required between a state like Lagos and the federal government in really accelerating e-governance. And do you agree that the state of Lagos can be given a pass mark?
I'll start from the last question, which is easier to answer. And the answer is yes, Lagos can be given a pass mark. But as you find with all pass marks, and with all lecturers, you reserve some of the points for yourself. You don't give everything to the student, even though the student has done very well. I do believe that Lagos is doing very well. The question is, can it do better, and should it be further ahead than it currently is? And I think the answer to that last question, which I'm posing myself, is yes. So, they're about, at the heart of the digital economy is innovation. And there are about 8 clusters globally as of 2018 that accounted for 86% of the innovation across the entire world. Only 8 clusters. And of those 8 clusters, none is in Africa. So you count, of course, the well-known ones of Silicon Valley, London, Paris. But then you have cities like Boston, and you have countries like Israel. You have cities like, of course, the Silicon Valley, of course, is a city. Is a city area. Then you have Beijing. So there are countries and there are cities, but each of them have been able to create clusters. So the key question is, where a country does not create a cluster, can a city create a cluster that supports innovation? And one of the things that actually support that innovation, there are some fundamentals. Some would lie within the purview of the government, of Lagos State government, some with the federal government. An example would be IP protection. Every one of these 8 clusters is characterized by a number of things, but the most important is IP protection. So in IP protection, that's a federal law. But we've seen Lagos State take actions with regard to things like traffic control. We've seen them take action to things like child rights. They've taken action around things like domestic violence and gender violence. And these are very specific things that actions are taken by the state government around what is most important to it. My belief is that if Lagos State actually wants to drive the innovation economy, it needs to figure out what specific actions can we take around fundamental things like IP protection. Countries that grow around a liberal immigration policy. We've seen the special visas that have been created recently in Dubai for the United Arab Emirates. We've seen the visas that have been created in the US and other such countries. So when you come to the city, the question would be, what kind of a visa, quote unquote, can Lagos State provide that attracts the best? And at this point, it's critical for us to understand the numbers. There are 22 million people in Lagos State, and it's growing every minute. In fact, it's growing exponentially at the rate of about 3.6% to 3.9% per annum. Yet you look at the human capital component, the total volume of people in tertiary education in Lagos State as we speak today is under 500,000. So the state is not producing adequate human capital to drive its growth internally. So if it's not doing that, then it must create the visa, quote unquote, that attracts the best from Nigeria. And that's what is driving that 3.9%, that people are coming to Lagos. The key question to ask is, what is the capacity, intellectual capacity, and ability of these people to actually engage in the digital economy as consumers or as producers. And that leads us to the next variable. And I'll just mention them very quickly. The entrepreneurial culture is already known. And Lagos is doing a great job around kind of like pushing that entrepreneurial culture. We have strong venture capital flows. I already alluded to that. We've talked about high availability of infrastructure, and I'll come back to that. And the other one is the education webs, the connections between the clusters, because innovation comes out of industry connecting with academia to produce new technology. And then the government-funded clusters. As we speak today, we don't have a government-funded cluster in Lagos, and we desperately need one. Not one, but more than one. And I think that came up in the earlier discussion. And just to land on the availability of infrastructure, I firmly believe that if you prioritize what you want to do in Lagos to create an environment that is a smart city, not smart by infrastructure, but smart by virtue of its human capital and their contribution to the productivity levels, you need to over-invest in the education space. And to do that means you don't necessarily have to depend on high availability of infrastructure. Indeed, the latest study by the GSMA says that the key they have found that there isn't a direct relationship between consumption of internet services and internet-related services and availability of infrastructure. Many parts of Africa have infrastructure, but it's not being used. So the critical question is why? And I'm saying that the most important thing, and what ISPON believes, is that you have to address the segment of your demographic that requires that, and that requires technology-related services, and that's how you build a digital economy. And the biggest sector is actually in government. So the more the government uses technology to deliver citizen services, the faster the cluster grows, the bigger the economy grows, the greater the value of technology to the citizen, and by extension, the ability to create a better life for us all.
Thank you, Chineye, for particularly giving us a broad view, and also speaking to some of the views of ISPON. I think your passion for this advancement can never be in doubt. You and I, have served on a bunch of panels and groups, really looking at all these topical issues. And I really like how you've posed the question about the readiness of the citizenry. And so, since we have, I believe we have Mr. Akin Banuso, the Country General Manager of Microsoft, with us, I'd like to invite you to the stage now and ask you a question. How do we ensure that the citizenry of Lagos is ready to engage with everything the government is doing? How do we bring the citizens to the table and get them better engaged with even the currently available e-government services? Do we have Aki here?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. Can hear you. Yes, thanks.
All right, good.
You can put in a camera and say hi.
Okay. I'm here in the hall, so I don't know whether you can see me online. My name is Akin Banuso.
We can hear you clearly.
Okay, great. So my name is Akin Banuso. I'm a Country General Manager for Microsoft in Nigeria and Ghana. And I also stretch to lead the enterprise business across the MEA emerging markets. Very interesting question, and let me say congrats first to the state government and the organizers. This is something that's particularly important, governance and technology. To your particular question, how do we get people more engaged? How do we get them to engage with technology? The technology itself is almost irrelevant. It's an enabler, in my opinion. We need to get back to the fundamentals, and the fundamentals are, teaching our kids from a young age, cleaning out the curriculum, and these are things that we're already discussing. These are things that Lagos State government is already looking at. I think the commissioner said something. Lagos State is a sub-national. Right? So there is an interplay of local and federal policies that need to come together. So one of the things that I'm very keen on is how we take the best ideas that we have from the commercial world and bring into government, right? So there's a lot of ideas. You can think about how the agencies interplay and work with each other. And back again to what you were talking about specifically on how we get people engaged, it's about bringing up the lowest common denominator. So whereas we have a lot of private schools, what we need to be focusing on is what's the lowest common denominator for all of us. People like myself went to public schools when we were growing up, and this was a thing of pride, right? There were loads of technical colleges where people could learn trades, they could learn, hands-on skills. So today, most organizations, even the previous speakers and people who come on, Google and co, have started saying, look, we don't need people to come in with university degrees. So we need to start thinking vocational, we need to start thinking practical, right? We need to think about how we meet people where they are currently, as opposed to, learning by rote and having a fixed mindset. I'll leave it for there for now, so that you can get on with things for now.
Thank you very much, Aki, for sharing some thoughts on really how you start to build a bottom-up, boil the ocean to ensure that the citizens are ready to meet the government as it really adopts technology. I'd like to introduce herself and really give is Juliet here? I believe we have Juliet. Just keen to know your thoughts, particularly on the role that organizations like the one you work for, Google, can play in really helping the government of Lagos really accelerate its use of technology in delivering services to the public. What role can organizations like yours play in helping the state accelerate this? I'd also like to get Adora's comment on this from Facebook as well, but perhaps we have Juliet go first. If we don't have Juliet or Adora, do you want to take a stab at that and share some thoughts on that?
Thanks, Kola. So, we can look at it from 2 points. First, we can look at the tools that we produce and we roll out. From Facebook's point of view, immediately you can think of the ability to facilitate communication through things like WhatsApp, through IG, through Workplace, through Messenger. Our ability to provide concierge services for government, which allows them to tailor their messages to their different audiences. Our ability to provide trainings for around being able to maximize the content and the data and the information that they're receiving. We can look at it from the point of the products that we also offer. Things like our data for good, population density, electricity distribution, disaster, disease, gender equality, business, maps that we have, climate information that we can curate and provide in order to help facilitate better policy planning, better information, better data management. You can look at it from the point of our partnerships with civil society and communities around things like public safety and health and education. You can look at it around our own internal policies, the way we engage around things like election integrity, the information that we provide or we don't allow to be provided on these communication channels, our own rules and policies around things like ads, political ads and political speech. You can look at it from the angle of engaging with government and governance around content and people's behaviors online, and how do you begin to inform, educate, and change the narrative around false news and misinformation. You can look at it from the angle of our engagement with law enforcement, your counterterrorism, your combating violent extremism, your safety online, your trafficking, abuse, and then finally, I'd say for the other angles that we also are not only partners but also facilitators is also from the job creation side. From the not only our physical presence and our contribution to the employment and the economic simulation of the state, but also what we do with our SMB trainings, and our support to the innovation ecosystem, the developer circles, the accelerator programs, the product experimentation that we facilitate through our presence, and our engagement in the economy and the governance of Lagos. I think I will stop there. And
Nora, hearing you speak, I mean, it would suggest to me that Facebook is really doing a whole lot. But I want to put you on the spot. Thankfully, we have the Honorable Commissioner with us. Commissioner, how much more do you think organizations like Facebook and Google can do to support the states in this adoption of e-governance? And I'm particularly interested in the role of misinformation. Right, we saw a lot of unfortunate activity inspired by misinformation that spread online through WhatsApp and Facebook and even Google. What level of engagement would you like to see to not only help the state to accelerate e-governance, but also manage the negative impact of misinformation? Honorable Commissioner, please.
Oh, thank you very much for the question. I'm glad to see Facebook here today because Facebook is planning to open its first office in Africa, which will happen in the second quarter of this year. It's not just to support, but they're bringing in engineers. That will give us direct access to be able to interact with Facebook. And the most important part, when it comes to dissemination of fake news and other propaganda, we expect Facebook to be more active. I know they're doing that. They do flag irresponsible messages, but of the most important part is what can we gain, in terms of education. How do we extend the fair use of Facebook to our citizens? I connect them to their efforts. So also, you look at companies like Google, they're doing Nigeria for some time. They have a development center. They are in Lagos. You look at Microsoft, they've invested a lot in Nigeria. And in 2019, Africa Development Center in Lagos and Nairobi. Why? This is to show the attractiveness of Lagos. And Lagos will continue to provide the enabling environment to allow companies like this to invest here because they believe in what we're doing. And we believe that technology is the future. There's another company I want to talk about, which is Texas Park. They opened their first office in Lagos in 2018 with 300 people. I was there and at that event, they made an announcement that they're going to increase the number of staff to 400. Very impressive. But when we look at what they're doing today, they're going to move next to Focus Therapy and be able to accommodate 1,700 employees. So which is fantastic. That means we have the potential. We are attracting companies, we are attracting corporations to come to Nigeria, to come to Lagos, and invest in our people because the mind is very moving forward. We have a lot of youth that are ready to work, and this company, they see a lot in there. The future of this country is not in oil, but in the power of knowledge of our people. And Lagos State
Thank you, Honorable Commissioner, for really really acknowledging the strides of the private sector. You know, I spoke at the Lagos State Art of Technology Summit some time ago, and I reminded us that this ecosystem has really thrived in spite of government. And I think as we continue to get more support from the Lagos State government, you can expect a continued growth of the technology ecosystem, not only when it comes to software, but services as well. If we have Patrick Oromosele, who's joining the panel, I'd like him to introduce himself. But, you know, the commissioner has given a really good report of the private sector. Is there one service you would like to, I mean, we've got everyone we need to make this happen on this panel today. Is there one service you engage with as a citizen of Lagos State that you would like to see the commissioner ensure is digitized in the short term? This is your stab at the lottery. Patrick.
Okay. Morning, everyone. I think we were surprised when we were asked to jump on this session, so I guess that's why it seemed like Impact Hub was forgotten during the initial discussions. But my name is Patrick. I'm the CEO of Impact Hub Lagos. And essentially what we do is we are a support organization for ideas and for businesses. And how we intervene is at 3 levels. So the first level of intervention is at the macro level, where we try to instigate or be part of discussions with the government and with policymakers. For instance, last week we were part of, in fact, we hosted a panel session and a breakout session on this topic that we're talking about today. The next level of intervention we have is on what we call a meso level, because the ethos for us in Impact Hub is nobody exists in silos or in a vacuum. We're all about ecosystems. So at that meso level, the academia, large corporates and organizations who play in that kind of band, we see what kind of interactions we can have with them to bridge the gap between those at the macro, which is like the policymakers, the government, and then those at the third level, which is the micro level. Now, the micro level are those ideas or those entrepreneurs, the man who has a good idea on how to improve leadership or accountability in government. And what we do at that stage is essentially the very basic things. We provide office space for them, so a place where they can come, sit down and work. But beyond that, our focus is on capacity building programs. So incubation programs, acceleration programs, investment readiness programs, based on the stage that that idea or venture is at. So to speak to your question, Kola, you said, what recommendations would I put before the commissioner regarding our discussion today?
No. I want to be specific. I said you're a citizen of Lagos, you interact with state services. What service, if you had a magic wand, what service would you like to see digitized tomorrow? Bearing in mind that we have Facebook on here, we have Microsoft on here, we've got Google on here. What service would you like to see digitized? I know the one I want to see.
Okay. So one of the key things that Chineye and Akin said was essentially you can't have the kind of leaps we want to have with technology unless you speak to the mind of the individual. So anything we're doing here is going to be based on the foundation of not so much education simply, but reorientation. When we had our session last week, a comment was made about, okay, so you have a laptop here, and if it's a powerful laptop, everybody knows what you can get out of a powerful laptop. But at the end of the day, you need a human being who is going to put on that laptop. So fundamentally, you cannot take out the human being from that equation. So with these solutions, I think what we need to focus on, and my magic wand moment would be any kind of information or any kind of intervention that can be put in place to help change the way people think. So with education now, access to that information, by and large, it's going to be based on the internet, number one. So making internet, I mean, vastly available, vastly affordable, and at good speeds, not the kind of internet that you load a page, you go and cook and come back and, So that'll be the first one. Then for those who don't have access to internet-ready devices, those who have this, pure water phones, a scenario where partnerships with the telcos, and we have situations where you're sending packets of information to people, be it information around leadership, be it information around accountability, social development, or security. Just things that, a 30-second message that, how you'd have these telcos call you on your phone saying, oh, connect your NIN or something like that. But this one, a very intentional means of, okay, government is supporting this with the telcos, and we are changing the mindset of Nigerians, because unless we touch that, the rest of the things we're building is just going to be on shaky ground. So let me pause for that.
Thank you very much for that. Honorable Commissioner, if you want to implement that, there are about 3 companies I can introduce you to today that can help you with a smart messaging tool to do SMS and WhatsApp messaging to your citizenry. We'll come back to that, but I want to continue playing the lottery. Adaora, if you could have the Lagos State government automate one process, citizen-facing process today, which would it be for you?
Oh, wow. Now I won't lie, that's a tough one. I think I would probably, and I'm being shameless about this, probably jump on what Mr. Eremasele just talked about. I think what we're looking at is a situation where there is a plethora of information, but there is a deficit of trust. And I think that the onus on who should be accountable and who should be transparent is, it fluctuates. And it depends on, first of all, the amount of information, the context of the conversation, and what the immediate fire is. So I think that if there was something that I would want immediately automated, which I believe would impact directly on governance, and not just governance broadly across of the state, but governance of the ecosystem as well. It would probably be either an information system or a portal where there is opportunity for direct access to policymakers and regulators, where there is opportunity to give feedback, where there is opportunity for dialogue and review and suggestions of proposed policy or as policies are being implemented. I think that when we talk about the environment that we're working in, and particularly with Lagos, Lagos prides itself, very, very rightly so, as being on the cutting edge. But one thing that I don't think is incorrect to say is that while you can be on the cutting edge of policy, policy also has to be consistent. Policy also has to be, to a certain extent, predictable. This doesn't mean that you cannot create an environment that will promote and support innovation. It is actually in that stability that you will actually be able to create the enabling environment for the innovation that will come out. And I think that there isn't sufficient communication and engagement with the practitioners and with the policymakers to be able to, first of all, set the stage and set the parameters for the creation of that policy, but also to give feedback on the effectiveness of that policy. So for me, it would probably be some kind of mechanism that provides not only technical foundational conversations, but also real-time feedback. And that in itself will increase accountability, it will increase trust, And it will definitely facilitate the growth of the ecosystem as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Adora. Adora here is suggesting a feedback communication management system between essentially looking at the citizenry and government. I mean, look, if I had the magic wand, and I'm glad the Honorable Commissioner is here, I would really want a Lagos where licensing and approvals are a lot easier. I was talking to a real estate investor doing a hospitality project last week, and he lamented really about the very manual processes that he's had to go through, you know, and I reckon this is something technology can really fix quite easily. I'd like to invite Chineye. I know you had a pretty strong opinion on the connectivity conversation, but if you had a magic wand today, what would you want Lagos State to automate? And why is this conversation important, Chineye? What are the dividends what dividends can the states look to benefit from really taking this seriously and accelerating it? Over to you, Chineye.
Thank you very much. I think it's important for us to recognize that one of the biggest challenges that governments face across the world, in Nigeria and perhaps in Lagos State, is a question of a trust deficit between the citizenry and the government itself as a provider of an environment that enables them be better, grow better, provide better for their families. And closing that trust deficit is supremely important. And I like the point that Adora has made, that a citizens portal that provides capacity for the individual citizen in Lagos State to actually understand what government is doing, how far it is going with these various projects is very, very important. But if I had to choose one thing, and I keep coming back to this, I think I've overemphasized this, but I can't emphasize it more. First of all, you know, the theme, I think Lagos State has it right with this theme. The theme, which is the overarching framework for its strategy. What it does need to do is in each of those segments, it needs to pull out a single key and critical project that it has to deliver. And as I said before, the infrastructure of connectivity is great, but that's not what's going to solve the problem. Because even when you deliver that infrastructure, you haven't delivered the funding to the people to be able to afford the data that you wanted to use to go online. And this is where I kind of like a little bit contrarian. My view is that Lagos is like a Dubai or like a Liberia, and it's a city-state. And there is absolutely no reason why we cannot blanket Lagos State as an entire economy with connectivity that is not internet. It happened in the past when we had the ISM bands and the banks were communicating via the ISM bands and all the ISPs are running through those ISM bands. Lagos needs a metropolitan area network and not connectivity to the internet more than anything else. And I'll tell you the reason why. In every society and every organization, 80% of what you do is internal. It's not to the internet. And it's an uncomfortable story to tell for those who have strong value propositions around internet connectivity. But I would rather invite them to think that if today, 20% of Lagosians are digitally literate because they have access to, they don't call limited access to internet and the cost of having continuous access. What if we expanded that to 80%? What if we had every single waiter, every single cleaner, every single driver able to connect to a network that delivers education and access to government services that have absolutely nothing to do with the internet? All that happens on the wide area network that has zero connectivity to it, zero internet to it, but 100% connectivity. It would mean that every single one of the 22 million people in Lagos State are connected automatically into the digital economy. Their onward ramp to the internet becomes automatic. But so long as we continue to put the internet and data costs as kind of like a barrier, we will not get there. The next important thing is devices. And I want to just stop there. And Kola, this is very, very important for us to make this point. We are ISPON, the software industry, but our software is consumed via devices. We cannot have a situation where the majority of our people are unable to acquire devices. And those devices cannot be acquired by way of imports. We have to build a local OEM capacity to deliver to the people devices for as low, mobile internet devices, computing devices for as low as 30,000 naira. We need to ensure that every student who's going to school has access to a device that is at least 6 to 8 inches of a screen and is able to consume services on that device. We will not get there through mobile phones or smartphones. That is not enough to drive services. As good as it is, it seems like a shortcut to us, But the real consumption happens when people upgrade to devices from 8 inches and upwards. For that to happen, Lagos needs to unlock the capacity of the existing OEMs in Lagos to begin to build devices to international quality with an assured demand for the 22 million people who are in Lagos. And that is the game changer. A device in the hand, connection to a metropolitan area network, and you will see Lagos in 10 years' time, a completely different environment.
Fantastic. Look, I love radical ideas, and Chineye is one to always present them. I'm glad, I would invite the commissioner to sort of respond to some of these radical suggestions. But just before I do, I wonder what Akin thinks about this really radical idea of a metropolitan area network, and really how we need to rethink devices, as Chineye has postulated. Akin,
Yeah.
do you mind making a comment, please?
Sure, thank you. I actually love all of the ideas that I'm hearing, and I think it's something that we need to do, which is we need to start from, not from scratch. We just need solutions for us, by us. You know, it's one of the reasons why when the commissioner mentioned about the Africa Development Center, it's not that we couldn't hire engineers and take them to California or wherever else. It's that we need people who work with us and with people globally who go through Lagos traffic daily and understand what the challenges are. So to Chineye's point, right, a lot of the work that you do doesn't have to go onto the internet. Maybe your control plane, you know, you need to have some internet access. But really, if you look at education, one of the things that we're talking about is whitelisting and providing local content, right? So having a hybrid cloud model where, if you think about what Netflix is already doing, you bring servers in and you put what is mostly used here local so that people can access them. We are talking to the Ministry of Digital Economy to see how we can leverage NIPOST offices to see whether we could actually then put pockets of data and information all around the nation so that people can access them locally. So these ideas are absolutely spot on. It's something that is very, very needed. So the metropolitan area network it's where everything else started anyway. So you can think about it as a mini internet, but it's for your metro area. I think it's, and again, to speak to what you asked before, I think Adora spoke about having a portal. Absolutely agree with that. I think you yourself, Kola, mentioned Estonia. I had to go back to that because Estonia happens to be one of those countries that we've been working with for years. We have a number of case studies with them publicly. And what they've done is not only build a portal for the country, they've used that portal as a gateway to government services. So if you think about government services, you digitize everything. They've been working with blockchain and similar technologies, having a digital identity. So if you think about what Lagos State is going, the first thing is Lagos is already on the track. It's now bringing everything together. There's already LASRA trying to capture people's ID. You can't get digital if you cannot trust. As Chineye was saying, there's a lack of trust. If you cannot trust who's on the other end, you don't know whether it's a, as we say, Yahoo person or something else. So identifying people digitally and having a digital identity and harmonizing all of that so that I don't go to the mobile phone company, I go to my local government area, and then the same thing when I want to get a passport. It should be the same. And to be able to do that, we really need to start thinking in a joined-up fashion, right? We need to think in a joined-up fashion, which is in Lagos State. Let's just take Lagos State alone. There really needs to be an interagency head of digital, right? And people say, put your money where your mouth is, right? Digital doesn't need to be IT. Digital is just a way of being. So when my kids are born now, they look at the first device they get and they just start using it. I still have to figure it out, right? So digital is a way of being. It's a way of governance, and the government needs to prioritize that and say, we're going to go digital, education, agriculture. So to Chineye's point, if we're going to do this in a big way, we need to start thinking about how we bring the cost down, or, again, as I said at my opening statements, we need to think about how we democratize this so that the lowest common denominator, the child of someone who is not rich, who is not even middle class, should know that they can have access to those same services that anyone else in the state can. And that's the key. I'll hand it back.
Fantastic, fantastic. I really love the final comment here about ensuring that this movement is inclusive and democratized. Adaora, I'm going to come back to you on the issue of security and how we can get citizens to really trust this adoption of digital governance. But before we do, Honorable Commissioner, there's one more magic wand suggestion here in the comments. JB says, good morning. My magic wand moment or request is to decentralize the ticketing system for BRT buses. The current system sees the sellers carrying too much cash at the bus stops. There should be a system for commuters to buy tickets before they get to the bus stop. This sounds like something that can be implemented tomorrow. I personally have seen pitch decks for several companies that I would love to invest in. I simply can't because I do not think they have the mandates to sell BRT tickets. Honorable Commissioner, would you like to comment on some of these suggestions that have come forward? Maybe we can start a mini project implementing team right after this conversation. Honorable Commissioner, please.
We're the only state
There is therefore connectivity. When we talk about metropolitan area network, as well as wide area network, or local area network, today you have to look at a bigger picture. There are so many resources available outside of Nigeria that we get access to. When you're in the education line, you need to do research. You have to work with people, not only in Nigeria, but outside the country. So we have to limit ourselves to local content. But it is very important that we continue to build local content. We build locally for global impact. It's very important. And that's why we have to state to provide that amazing environment so that we be able to participate in the world stage. There are other things. We have the ECRS, which will be completed by the ECL. We have EL, which we're looking into. The e-governance, if you remember, our contract with the society to provide good governance, to provide services, and then to leverage on technology. COVID training, we are starting COVID in technology. To install that completely, we continue to perform our work. We've been meeting at the State Executive Council every week since the pandemic. How are we able to do that? We are leveraging technology. I think a big chance to the communication industry because they provided conduit for the exchange of information. You can be anywhere in the world and be able to communicate directly with the people, the citizens, co-workers, and so on. We need to bring our people up to speed. It is very important for us to invest in digital literacy because the world is going that way. And we are committed. Our schools are committed. Our special education system is committed. We'll continue to do what is necessary to move the state forward. I hope I've touched on every question. Oh, on the transportation. There is going to be a consolidation whereby you have one ticket, just like the Metro Plus Pass in Washington DC or the one in the UK. So everything will be loaded and then you'll be able to use it. There's today's planning and coordination. We'll work on it and make sure we deliver a solution because it's important to make life easier for our people. And how do we do that? We leverage on technology. So with technology, they'll be able to load their cars at convenience of their own or at a central point instead of having to fly flat everywhere. We are supporting transportation on land and we are supporting transportation on sea. So we're going to deliver and soon as we're also going to have metro rail system. All these will have to be coordinated from one solution and that is what it is intended. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Commissioner. I was going to be a bit unhappy if we left here without a commitment to implement one of the suggestions. I'm glad to hear that the BRT transport ticketing system should be on stream soon. JB, I hope that pleases your heart. We have just 2 minutes to go, but before I'd like to give Adora the last word and maybe take one question. But before I invite Adora to really comment on specifically how we address the risks and fears with security, citizens being concerned about their data and their ability to trust government. I'd like to just recognize the Honorable Commissioner for Environment, Mr. Tunji Bello, who's joined this conversation. Thank you very much. Engineer Joe Igbokwe, the Special Advisor on Drainage. And finally, Mr. Akim Fahim, who's with us today, the Honorable Commissioner of Science and Tech. Thanks for joining this conversation. Adora, please have the last word, and perhaps we might take one question before we go.
Thank you so much, Kola. So I know that when you talk about security, the primary focus will be around what we would consider to be the exploitation of personal privacy, collection, use, value, extraction of data by companies. But I think also that there is another side to that, which is public sector privacy and the collection and use of data by governments, especially as AI is becoming more and more widely adopted. And what I would say is that the aim should be to balance the risk with opportunity, and the degree of concern can be put down or managed through the levels of trust in governance. There's something called the contextual integrity. When you reveal information in one context, you trust that it's not going to pop up and surprise you in another context. And when people better understand this, they are clearer about what information they're sharing, they're prepared to share, and who to share it with, in exchange for better service or an improved, quality of life. If you don't have this, then the trust is broken and the system fails. So you can have the policies around how you can share your information, what people can use with your information, the obligations of the companies that gather your information. But you should also have a similar contract with the governments about what they can use your data for, how they can use your data for, your data, what you have the information to know that that they're using your data for. And government itself should be bold enough to create policies that holds all three parties, the public, the private sector, and itself accountable, so that you maintain this level of trust. Because if you don't have trust, you can't have accountability, you can't have transparency, and it's an infinity loop. If you can't have accountability, you can't have transparency, and you can't have trust, and it simply just goes back in on itself. So when you're looking at policies that you're making, you're making policies that are broad enough to encompass innovation, that are also that also allow for accountability, and that have dependency in their oversight and their enforcement as well, on both sides. And I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Adora, for really allaying our fears. Coming from Facebook, you have a lot of experience on these matters, so I appreciate that comment. Before we close, I'd like to take one comment from the audience, or one question rather from the audience. I know we're out of time, but this has been a really engaging conversation. Do we have any question from the comments? Chineye has been sharing a few remarks in the chat that I encourage you to review. Really, the internet is not necessarily the solution. We need a metro area network in Lagos, and I'm a strong believer in that as well. Any questions from the audience?
Yes, thank you. Good morning once again. My name is Fatai Olufeso. I'm representing Premium Pension Limited. I'm delighted.
Go ahead.
I'm delighted with the conversations that have been going on since the session starts. I have 2 points to raise. Number one is, yes, there are quite a lot of activity that is going on, within the state government, and there is need for us to, look at how do we engage, the citizen, so that there will be that synergy and collaboration with whatever policy or activities that we are bringing on board. Particularly the fact that we know technology is the way to go. Nigeria, Lagos cannot be at the back of activity, so we need to be at the front. And how do we, like was raised, how do we ensure that we carry along all the citizens, all stakeholders, so that particularly on the technology drive, how do we carry everybody along so that we key into it? I'm happy with contribution made on how to make devices available to the least person in the society. Then the next one is between the Ministry of Science and Technology and Ministry of Education. How do we start from the grassroots, from our primary school? How do we begin to educate? How do we begin to bring them on board so that we accept and appreciate technology to drive our activities? Thank you.
Thank you for the question and comment. I know I was really keen on having a lady close our session, but I think a response is necessary to that question. And if the Honorable Commissioner doesn't mind, would like you to make a remark on that before we close. Thank you for the question. All right, thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, Honorable Commissioner. We are 7 minutes over time, and I think it's really important that we stay disciplined and on schedule. So I regret to announce that we would have to close the session. I understand that there are a few more questions, but thankfully a number of the panelists are physically present in Lagos. I hope that the questions can be asked directly. My name is Kola. I know it's been really an honor to moderate such an engaging conversation. And I'm always happy to continue the conversations at kola.aino@venturesplatform.com or kola_aino. Thank you to my panelists, and thank you to the hosts and the Lagos State government for this fantastic opportunity. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
as at the advent of COVID-19, one of the things that was in short supply, in fact, across the African continent, were ventilators. And so LASRIC took on the task of intervening and funding ventilator research. And as such, we came up with a very unique ventilator design, a dual motor ambubag ventilator design, which right now is actually patent pending. The application is in the patent office, and we believe that patent will be granted. And of course, it stands as a very unique innovation that was built in Lagos. This is one of the outcomes that LASRIC has seen over the past 1 year. This is all in pursuance of Lagos State's bigger agenda, which is the smart city agenda. And I understand that if Lagos is to
for that, we make life easier for the people of Lagos State. And part of that is to leverage technology. If you look around you, connectivities to the length and to reach markets. We're going to reach public institutions. Most importantly, we're going to reach because